Riley stalked down the corridor. His attendant sensed his rage and followed behind him precisely 2 paces behind, far enough to avoid his attention while maintaining proper etiquette. They maintained this formation with Royal Guard drones following behind. Marching was too coarse a word to describe the way they moved. They moved like they had spent countless hours practicing and refining the journey down this soul corridor. As they moved, dramatic light shows played upon their luminescent scales. Their tails and wings caressed the air like the fins of ocean creatures gliding through water. Their reptilian heads, decorated with crests that put the greatest sunburst to shame, remained locked, facing forward, like they were perfectly assured the all in their surroundings was as it should be. There was never a misstep nor deviations from their desired path. Their gliding movements mirrored perfectly. This was to be expected from members of the ICup, who prioritized perfection above all else. Yrrols were an ancient race whose technology and physiology made the dominant races of the Galactic Republic look like mere cave dwellers. Their perfection began with the world that had birthed them, Daveth. Daveth orbited a stable star from a comfortable distance. It was as if the world itself could see the purity of the Yrrols and paid them homage with a perfect climate and would never dare to bother them with natural disasters. Their perfection as a race was further proven by the location of their star. It was located directly in the center of the Galactic Republic, far from the borders where war is constant. Never needing to fear or fight for their survival, the Yrrols quickly evolved into beings of supreme intelligence, who quickly surpassed most of the other known races in all science and understanding. Though they were not satisfied with only perfecting technology, they also applied their minds to art, creating great works of beauty, whose value rivaled that of smaller planets. This sheltered life is why they were so thoroughly unprepared when warnings that had never been used since their creation began to flash. Of course, they had built observation posts and had a large network of satellites, but this wasn't done out of fear of attack, but rather because it was the proper thing to do. This is why they were filled with disbelief when scanners that usually revealed trade or cargo ships began to tell of ships of war. This information was taken to Riley, head of the HFY family, and for the first time since he hatched, he didn't know what to do. The other ruling families, retaining their composure like all true sons of Daveth, all but begged Riley to decide what actions to take. After all, his family was the top military tech exporter of the planet and had more with armies and war than most Yrrols, which was only communicated enough with the Galactic Republic's naval representatives to know what they wanted their drones to do. Riley began to learn a new emotion that day: fear. He could not shirk this duty because that would be to admit imperfection, which was unacceptable. But if the scanner's data was true, then there was a small fleet heading straight for their system. The realization that he could not stop it hit him like a hammer. The Xiu would come to his world, and there would be no diplomacy. There would be no bartering. They would come to conquer, to burn, to enslave, to kill. The Xiu's history is almost as long as our own, and throughout it they have known nothing else. Their entire culture is built around an eternal crusade to find new food sources to feed their ever-growing hive worlds. Their insectoid nature allows to breed special castes of warriors who genetically designed only to fight and die for their overlords. War was coming to his people, and there was nothing he could do to save them. Though it shamed him to do so, he sent a call for help to the Republic, and their response revealed another emotion he had never needed in his sheltered life: rage. "They are sending us primates," he muttered in disbelief. He read again to make sure he wasn't mistaken. The response said they were diverting the closest military assets, a transport fleet carrying the 7th Company of the Iron Guard with the 8th Artillery Corps and the 10th Armoured Cavalry Regiment attached. All forces are entirely made up of humans. "They are sending us primates," he said again in shock. From what he knew of humans was that they were primitive creatures that were just as likely to kill each other rather than contribute to the greater good of their race. There was only one way this could be taken: insult. He knew that the other major races had long been envious of his people, but to think they would stoop so low to allow invaders to approach his system with impunity. Not only was he forced to beg for help, but they continued to spit on his people by replying to his request for aid with ships full of feral creatures. He began to understand why the races with less than perfect self-control were overcome by this newfound emotion, rage. After everything they had done for the Republic, all the technology they had given them, after allowing them honour of visiting their home system and seeing the fruit of generations of labour done by artisans and craftsmen with no peer, they send us primates. For a moment he forgot about the approaching fleet, so consumed with the insult dealt to his people, but to plan in anger is flawed and beneath him. So with his considerable self-control he buried his resentment for the Republic, and began researching the primates that are to be his only people's aid. The Republic's database states that they have only recently joined the Republic. During the last large-scale battle, a Zeev cruiser was able to break through the Republic's battle line. It sustained heavy damage and was forced to crash land on the nearest planet. The Republic dispatched available forces to track the surviving Zeev and exterminate them before they could begin creating a hive. Exterminating Zeev was typically a grim task, impossible to do quickly due to their ability to quickly adapt their warriors to different environments. It was guaranteed to be long, bloody process on a world where they would be able to tunnel and form underground bastions. The Dow generals were filled with shock when they entered orbit and saw the planet already in a full-scale war. The shock turned to confusion as to who was fighting. There should have been no life advanced enough to stand head-to-head with the Zeev on this primitive planet. The veteran generals didn't hesitate to commit their forces to aid the race that would later be identified as humans. The tide was quickly turned and the Zeev exterminated. The humans quickly brought into the Republic. To show their gratitude by pledging themselves and their armies to the unending war with the Zeev. The local Republic leaders were at a loss to understand how the humans were able to not only resist the Zeev Legion, but to stop it in its tracks. It was as if they knew they could not win, but were still determined to extract a heavy price for every foot of land lost. Their technology was estimated to be at least 200 years behind Republics, yet they had fought the Zeev to a standstill. Scientists have only been able to say that the global threat to them somehow triggered them to develop and grow at a greatly accelerated rate. Days ago I would have found it funny. Primates who are just beginning to learn to walk claiming that they will fight with us, but now all I feel is despair. My people are threatened, and they send us primates.